Life without Liam Coen is beginning to look more and more likely. Evan, I'm kicking you off the show. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, the good kind of Bucs, not the Ohio kind of Bucs.
No, I got confused because I thought you were talking about the other Bucs.
Yeah.
So that's why I did the OHIO, because they won a national championship against Notre Dame. So I thought that's what silly mistake by me. That's on me. That's my bad.
They still can't beat Michigan. This is your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And, of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky, the very happy Ohio State grad at eKlosky WTSP. And this show is here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right. Yeah. Ohio State won the national championship. Everybody that, went to Ohio State is happy about that. That's about all I got. Now that that's all out of the way, let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And
we're going to circle. We'll circle back to in Atlanta. We'll circle.
I'm sure we will. Just to continue to kick me while I'm down, Rick Stroud has reported that the Buccaneers are preparing for Liam Coen to be offered the Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching job as early as Wednesday and preparing to basically be in the hunt for their fourth offensive coordinator in as many years. This would also mean that not only does Todd Bowles have a different offensive coordinator every year of his head coaching tenure in Tampa, but Baker Mayfield would not have the same offensive coordinator back-to-back years at any point in his NFL career. So let's hear it for continuity. Evan, let's start with this. If Liam does get the head coaching job offer from Jacksonville, do you see any way that he turns it down a la Ben Johnson last year to stay in Tampa?
I have a very tough time believing that's going to happen. There are 32 of these suckers, and while the GM position there and how that structure is set up is really ass backwards, to be honest, there's still a lot to like with the Jaguars on the field. Remember, this was a team where we thought not too long ago, even entering the season, that, hey, this is a sleeper team to win their division and, go to the playoffs and so on and so forth. That division, just like the NFC South, is not that strong, and you already have your franchise quarterback. You have one of the best, arguably the best rookie wide receiver from this last class, and Brian Thomas Jr. There are a lot of great rookie wide receivers from this past class, but he's electric. You don't have to rebuild the entire offensive line, maybe add a couple of pieces here or there. The defense has good bones if you throw in the right DC. So look, I understand from fans how they can look at the Jaguars and look at their history and say, why would you want to join that? Again, we said the same thing about the Panthers and Dave Canales. And as that season came to an end, we started looking at the Panthers and we're like, oh, they're starting to cook on something. They're starting to look like a better team, especially with having the quarterback. When you have the quarterback in place, it's easier to have everything else follow. So that's the number one goal when you're looking for a new gig, that head coaching gig. Is there a legitimate quarterback? And obviously, Trevor Lawrence is a yes in that category. As far as what the Buccaneers can do in this scenario, sure, they can offer him the world as far as money and, potentially kicking Todd to the curb. But is that something that Liam Coen's also going to want to do, right? Sure. Is Liam Coen going to say, if the Glazers say, hey, Liam, we're going to make you the next head coach, and we're going to elevate Todd to a role within the front office. And, might be Liam Coen to say, look, Todd still wants to coach. I'm not taking Todd's job. I got a job over here. Doesn't matter what money you give me. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. But, if you really wanted me, then you could have fired Todd at the end of the season and proved that you weren't just trying to cross your fingers, hoping that I'd come back / be forced in a position. And, I've been on record as saying that if it gets down to this point, you as a Glazers got to come up with that decision. And, I am in favor of keeping Liam Coen. That's where I stand. But there is also the human element of it where Liam Coen can also not accept the job, right? And not be in that position. So we'll see what happens. It seems like a foregone conclusion at this point that Liam's going to head to Jacksonville. And it's pretty crazy to me that when it comes to Jason Light's consortium of minds there, that nobody wants to dip into that world. But when it comes to the offensive coordinator here, you just back-to-back years of getting poached. That's, it's kind of unless you're Sean McVay, or like one of those people who are play callers and have people underneath them and they keep going and they have the offensive coordinator title. It's pretty rare to kind of see you hit back-to-back years on head coaching hires. So, yeah, I get it. Fans are frustrated, sad, and it certainly throws a curveball as to what can happen in the future.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And the insiders, one of them, even messaged to me today when I sent out a text. He said, "I get nervous every time you text me now because this is just kind of hanging over Bucs fans' heads. Is Liam going to stay or is he going to go?" And we are going to talk about if he does go. And you have a short list of potential offensive coordinator candidates that you really like. We're going to talk about that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending the Foo Fighters concert last year, and it was an unbelievable show, definitely in my top 5 concerts of all time. And now Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming concert I'll be going to next month using the Game Time app, and used that Game Time Picks to find incredible seats. With Game Time Picks, I found that amazing deal. I could see the view from my seat before buying, and this super deal was a particularly good one, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing showed the total cost upfront, so I didn't have any surprise fees when I got to checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. The new Locked On NFL is here, and it's 2 shows every day. You got the Madman Tyler Rowland in the morning. Then you can stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins. Add in the Locked On local experts. You get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make it your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Evan, let's talk about what happens if Liam Coen leaves. This Bucs job is probably the most intriguing offensive coordinator job in the NFL, given what they were able to accomplish last year, all of the pieces that they had.
I would say also the Detroit Lions. Them and the Lions should be able to get a really good – the Lions probably are going to promote from within. But I just want to say that it's really – the Bucs and the Lions are two super desirable jobs, whereas you look 2 years ago where the Bucs had to hire Dave Canales, who would never call plays before in the NFL in college, and they really took a chance on him. The juxtaposition to where this team was, where they couldn't get someone to take that job, to where they are now, where I think you'd have pretty much any offensive mind worth their lick of salt to jump in the situation. I mean, it will be a highly coveted position.
Yeah, well, and not to mention, if you take this job, you're getting a head coaching offer in 2026. So that certainly helps.
In that regard, it does help, though. I mean, look at that. That also helps the resume of. I mean, we graduate our guys to head coaches. So,
all right. Well, although I'm pretty sure I know who one of your candidates is going to be, who is, I guess the first of your top candidates, in your mind that the Buccaneers should pursue for this offensive coordinator position?
Well, who do you think I'm going to take?
Oh, somebody that is near and dear to the hearts of Buccaneers fans, Chip Kelly.
Correct. Yeah.
Bucs fans hate that guy.
And rightfully so after what he did in 2012, right? He kind of said after winning the national championship that it was a full circle moment for him. He can have a full circle moment with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Look, I don't know where Chip ranks as far as on my list of where he'd be as far as calls are concerned, but I mean, he is one of the better offensive minds in football, right? 2, I don't think anyone's going to hire him as a head coach, like anytime soon, if ever again. So you also have the ability to know that if you hire Chip, he's probably going to be there a little bit. You don't have to chase him around in future interviews. But what he did with Ohio State this year in that talent, and he had up and down moments, but he is a run first guy. I think there are a lot of the things that he did at Ohio State that transfer over to what kind of Liam Coen did, certainly with the run game and how creative he can be there. And he will also have a similar bevy of talent, considering if they, sign Chris Godwin back, Mike, Chris, Jalen McMillan. I mean, he really doesn't have to stress himself out too much of reinventing his offense. So I think with Chip and what he can do with especially the running backs Tampa Bay has, he was an Oregon guy. He can also coach a guy like Bucky Irving. I think that he would be a very good hire, despite the history that he has here with the Buccaneers. I think he's worth a look. I think he's absolutely worth a look. And it's hard for you to argue to me that as an offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly isn't a great mind. We're not talking about Chip Kelly, the head coach. It's a different type of story, all right? A different type of lens and an angle to work with, and how he handles the entire, team and organization. That's not what we're discussing here. All he has to do is come in and run the offense. And I think if he wanted to pursue that opportunity, that he's absolutely a guy you need to bring in for an interview at the bare minimum.
I did hear something interesting in all the pregame hype for the national championship was that, if you looked at Ohio State against Michigan versus Ohio State in the playoff, I can't remember who it was. A former Buckeye that was talking about it. That was on the 2002 or the 2003 national championship team that beat Miami. And he said that he truly believed that for most of this season, and it was most evident against Michigan, that Chip Kelly was running Ryan Day's offense. And after that game, after that loss, it looked like it was one of those situations where Ryan Day just gave the reins over to Chip Kelly and said, you know what, it's 100% yours. You run it the way you run it. And you can see stark differences in how that offense played against Tennessee and against Oregon the second time and against Notre Dame versus the way that they played through much of the season. So I get it. In the Bucs historically, they were left at the altar by Bill Parcells once. They went back to that well and were left at the altar by him a second time. So it wouldn't be the first time that they kind of got hosed by a coach and then ended up, reaching out to him once again. So I
and that's the thing is you don't really need, it's not like, oh man, if Chip turns us down here, we're screwed, right? It's a little bit different in a head coaching search where, it was one day you had a report saying that they're nearing an agreement, that they're pretty much at the table finalizing terms. And then in the 11th hour, Chip said, you know what, I ain't going to do it, right? That was what kind of – because you had to start the process over again. So
yeah, well, and it was like less than a day. I think it was less than 24 hours from the time that Chip Kelly was being announced as the coach, then backed out, and then they hired Schiano. Like that was less than a 24-hour cycle, and it was completely crazy.
And here's the thing that we know about Todd Bowles, Jason Light, based on the previous two searches. If again we get to this, Liam Coen still has to accept the Jags job.
Sure.
But if we get to this, we know that the Bucs are going to search under every rock, right? They're going to have like double-digit interviews, and there are going to be names from out of left field who we do not talk about who are going to be brought in. No one had Dave Canales on their list when he was brought in for an interview. He was one of the last interviews, and he was accepted. Nobody had Liam Coen on their list. He was one of the last interviews, took the job. So Todd and Jason do a really good job of getting a great pool of candidates, listening to a handful of different ideas. And I think in doing so, clearly their process has worked. They hit it out of the park. They hit a grand slam with Liam Coen. I'll say they hit a solo jack with Dave Canales. But either which way, the process, I trust them. It's an unfortunate situation if it goes down that way, but when you succeed back-to-back years, I gotta believe that you have a good formula going.
All right. Well, give me another guy that you feel would really fit what the Bucs have been doing offensively and can really build off of what Baker in the running game did last year.
Another name, and this might, I think it's a little bit more debated by some, but I'm still very much on the Mike LaFleur train.
Okay.
Not a great stint in New York. Maybe he was too young for that sort of challenge. He never had a quarterback. I will say that when LaFleur came in, the Jets did improve from 2020 to 21-22. They had better numbers. Just it wasn't good enough. So maybe just the task was too strong. Maybe he doesn't have the goods. But, man, I cannot overlook a guy whose last name is LaFleur, who has worked under Shanahan and McVay. Like, these are the greatest minds right now in the National Football League. And you're going to tell me you don't have the goods to scrounge it together? And maybe if things fall apart, he can't adjust on the fly like a Liam Coen. Understood. But I just think that education is hard to find. And I have to bank on the guy's ability to piece it together and run the ship in a similar fashion, considering he comes from a similar tree as to Liam Coen. So I don't think you're going to bring in a playbook that looks so unfamiliar to the Buccaneers and that offense to try to keep continuity. And who knows, maybe he just learned. He had such a great learning experience with that Jets debacle that he's going to be better the second time around. And when I hear Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall kind of talk about, man, we didn't realize how good we had it when Mike was running the offense, that sticks out to me. I don't know. We all talk about how dysfunctional the Jets are. And we're just going to write a guy off who was 32 years old and couldn't necessarily figure out a situation with a dog crap offensive line and a dog crap quarterback. Like, are we really just not going to act like the guy didn't? I understand the great ones show brilliance kind of early on in their career, just like players. So hand up, but I'm willing to take that risk with him. He's still very high on my list for me. He's a guy you got to interview, and I got to imagine for him, if he's going to jump back into the pool, the Buccaneers are a team. Peter Schrager came out and said he's not going to the Patriots, right? Now, I don't know if that was just more so that McDaniels, going to take it anyway, but right. I would imagine that for him to have a second chance, he's got to feel really good about the situation, considering who knows if there's a third chance for him. And, man, if you can't succeed with what the Bucs got coming back next year, then maybe you don't have the goods. But that's as good of a situation as you're going to walk into.
All right, and real quick, give me one more name that kind of came to mind for you as a offensive coordinator candidate.
Someone who I trust. He gave me a really good suggestion. I didn't think about it because he's interviewing with Seattle right now. Was in a division last year. Clint Kubiak.
Ooh, okay.
Go look at Derek Carr's numbers. And I didn't do this until it was brought to my attention. Then I did it, and I was like, you know what? I'm upset that I didn't think about this before. Maybe because I thought that just Seahawks is a foregone conclusion. But if Derek Carr played a full year, we're talking close to 4,000 yards, about 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, probably the best QB rating of his career. The rushing offense was average, but also the Saints offensive line is not what the Buccaneers offensive line is. Kubiak was brought into interviews 2 years ago when the Bucs OC job was not a desirable one to be in. Now it is. If you had to tell me between the Seahawks and the Bucs what job you'd want walking into it, I would take the Buccaneers job.
Yeah, no doubt.
And considering how much the Saints give the Buccaneers fits and how important those divisional games are, I'd like to have that mind in-house too, if possible. So depending on where he's going with Seattle, that's a name to watch and maybe a name that Jason Light and Todd Bowles or whoever, they're back channeling.
Yeah, I like that a lot, especially, I mean, you take a look, like you said, the Saints offense versus the Bucs offense. There isn't a spot where the offense isn't an upgrade compared to what Kubiak was working with. I would say the closest would be running back, but Alvin Kamara now versus Bucky Irving now is very different than Alvin Kamara 5 years ago versus Bucky Irving now. So, you're looking at upgrades across the board. That could be a really interesting fit. I like that one. And of course, as this saga continues, I'm going to start to dive into some of my own coordinator candidates, but wanted to get your thoughts on it while this Liam news is kind of at the top of the docket. But we do have a couple of mailbag questions for you. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where Prize Picks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards, rushing touchdowns, and for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, and whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or you want to cash out quickly, Prize Picks has you covered. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL, all lowercase, all one word, to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't need to win to get the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP edition of Locked On Bucs. And this wasn't an insider mailbag, but I did have a couple of people slide into the Locked On Bucs DMs there on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. So I thought I would use those to pick your brain for just a little bit. And first, we have Chris, who wanted to know what you thought the future entailed for Lavonte David? Are the Bucs going to get at least another year out of him, or is this, in your mind, starting to trend towards when Lavonte is going to hang things up?
If I had to guess, I think Lavonte's got one more year left in him. I think that if the team, like I think they're going to do, invests in the defense, I think it would be very attractive for Lavonte to come back, because the Buccaneers are not a team that's in rebuild mode. I think the Super Bowl window is wide open in 2025 with the right moves. So if the team is committing to Lavonte, hey, we're going to make this, so-and-so moves. We're also going to make an investment at linebacker, so you don't have to do everything. We're going to help support you. I think there would be ample reason to bring Lavonte back. Now, have to understand the Bucs need to bring it. Lavonte isn't what he once was, but it's very clear when you look at the playoff game. At his best, he can still be pretty special. So he's still got some juice. I'm going to lean towards him returning, and I think between him and SirVocea Dennis, you can probably say we can plan for injuries, and if we combo those two, we'll make it through the year, and that way you're not relying solely on both of them. You're going to bring in someone to go side by side next to Lavonte, and maybe you got a fourth backup piece there. I don't know. I mean, at some point you can't have 90 reserves at every position, but to me, we're clearly showing cracks in Lavonte's game, but we're not at the point where it's time to move on either. And considering that's a position that they just don't have much depth at, tell him to come back, and maybe even if you tell him, look, we'll manage some snaps from you, I think that would be something great in at this point in Lavonte's career. So at this point on January 21st, the day that we're taping, give me Lavonte coming back.
All right, Chris, there you go. If Lavonte doesn't come back, you get to hold Evan personally responsible. All right, we also have Mark, who reached out to ask, what do you think the odds are that Chris Godwin comes back next season? And if you think he's leaving, what is going to be the biggest reason? Is it going to be the Bucs can't pay him what he wants, or he just thinks that there's a team that's a better fit?
To me, Godwin's coming back. I put it at high.
I'm also going to hold you personally responsible if you're wrong about that.
I just don't.
David's already
I saw that
pumping the tires to bring him to Washington,
and I get that if he's look. Chris was en route to an all-pro season.
Yeah.
Possibly the Triple Crown. And look, I mean, if Liam leaves, that's going to alter what kind of Chris does. But you obviously saw where Chris was most successful, so we figured out the formula. Not too worried about the injury. We've mentioned that a bunch of times. Not a ligament issue. It's a bone fracture thing that heals. He's still very much got the goods. And again, the Super Bowl window is open. If you guys didn't have the window open, I would say you move on. But if you don't sign Chris Godwin, then you got to draft another wide receiver to fill in that hole. And right now, this draft needs to be almost all defense. The first handful of picks need to be defense. Chris still has some really special years ahead of him. And I think if you sign him to a 3-year deal, I think you're going to be just fine with getting 3 years out of him. And that's probably as far as your window goes. Probably have 3 years there. So I think that you're a win-now team. You bring back your win-now player, and it helps you with the salary cap this year because you'd have to eat all the dead cap money if he leaves next season. But if you bring him back, yada, 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 a bunch of gobbledygook we don't need to break down, but you will get a better deal on him next season with the salary cap if you bring him back into the fold.
Yeah. Remember, the salary cap is a myth. It's not real. It doesn't exist. It's Fugazi. It's Fugazi. It's shout out Matthew McConaughey. They did not hook them horns. All right. Evan, what do we have going on over at 10 Tampa Bay and 10tampabay.com?
It was a great season on the Blitz. Really appreciative of you, James, for helping us out as always. We go into catch-up mode a little bit, right? And finally take some PTO days and whatnot. But still, we're all over the Lightning now. We will transition into Lightning coverage throughout the next handful of weeks here. I mean, we always cover the Lightning, but we'll go more in depth on them here soon as they push in the second half of the season. Believe it or not, pitchers and catchers report in a few weeks. The Rays will be back in our lives very soon, so we will be all over that as well. But again, we're tracking everything that has to do with the Buccaneers and their offseason along the way. And judging by what happens with this Jaguars interview, we can have plenty to talk about here soon. So just make sure you're following at eCloskey WTSP. Make sure you have our free 10 Tampa Bay app. Check out our YouTube page. And feel free to ask questions whenever throughout this offseason. You know, this is I think this is as critical of an offseason as the Bucs have had in quite some time, considering the margin for error, be making the playoffs or being Super Bowl caliber. So I think that's where the excitement comes from, is that Jason Light can really make this team a Super Bowl caliber squad with the right tankers. So we'll be all over it, and obviously I'll be here with James every WTSP Wednesday.
Yeah, and of course, looks like Mike Greenberg's going to stay. Still need to wait and see about Spy Tech, but they need to work their magic and see what they can do to turn this roster from a playoff team to a Super Bowl team. But that's going to do it for this episode. Please, again, check out everything that Evan is doing over on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at eCloskey WTSP. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. And of course, make sure you are subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on and wherever you get your podcast. And one last time, Evan, congrats on your stupid team winning the national championship. You're one of probably Buckeye fans that I know that I can count on this hand that I'm actually happy for. All the other ones are terrible human beings, and you will get what's coming to you. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.